Tonight, a threat of legal action against the control of customs from Dr. Ernest Hiller's attorney. Dr. Kenny Anthony faces the press and answers why his government did not purchase land within the PMA in St. Lucia's national interest. And the education minister in Barbados calls for an urgent probe into CXC results after several complaints. The details of these stories and more are coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovelace and Amy Joseph.
Good night. It is Thursday, the 24th of September 2020. Welcome to the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. I'm Lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. A threat of legal action has been made against the control of customs after he issued a letter to Dr. Ernest Hiller requesting that he bring his Land Rover in. Attorneys for Dr. Hiller have warned the control of customs that they will not hesitate to take action against him personally for misfeasance in public office on this matter. Rochelle Gonzalez begins our reporting.
On the 3rd of September, Dr. Ernest Hiller laughed off what he claimed was just another failed attempt to destroy his name and image by a scared United Workers' Party government after a press release was issued from the Office of the Prime Minister. Dr. Hiller called the move a shameful misuse of the Office of the Prime Minister, and he then challenged the government to take the vehicle if it had a leg to stand on.
I challenge the Prime Minister that if he is convinced that I have acted in contravention of the law, and he respects the rule of law, then let him and his surrogates take court action to repossess any property which I'm in possession of, which he believes is not rightfully owned by me. I shall continue then to exercise my right to sue him for abuse of public office and malicious persecution. And of course, he will have to face a political response that he has never seen before.
In a letter dated September 16th, making reference to a request for documentation and perfect entry for importation of vehicle, Dr. Hiller was ordered to return the vehicle in question to Port Castries into the care and custody of customs within 7 days of the date that the letter was issued. This is the response of Dr. Hiller's attorney, Renee St. Rose, who wrote, quote, "Our client remains concerned with your actions and the length to which you have abused your office to seek to detain his vehicle and to cause him reputational damage, and in this regard, our client reserves his rights. Should you take any step to detain our client or his vehicle or harass him further in relation to this vehicle, we will not hesitate to commence proceedings against you personally for misfeances in public office and the damages arising from there." End quote. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Rochelle Gonzalez.
Thank you, Rochelle. Now, CXC results are continuing to stir controversy. Barbados' Minister for Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Sansha Bradshaw, has called on the Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, to conduct an urgent investigation into concerns over the recently released CAPE and CSEC examination results. Bradshaw issued a statement on the matter. It reads, quote, "The disquiet among students who recently received the Caribbean Examinations Council's CAPE and CSEC examinations is definitely cause for concern. I am of the view that an urgent investigation must be carried out by CXC into this matter to preserve the integrity of the examinations. I know that the Council has already responded to indicate the procedure to initiate a review process by Friday the 23rd of October. And while there must be respect for process, I do feel, however, that given the unprecedented number of students who have raised concerns, particularly those online, I would strongly urge CXC to move swiftly to investigate and also to consider the waiver of fees associated with the review. Indeed, these are not normal times, and as a cloud of uncertainty looms over the heads of several of our students who are preparing to go off to university, it is incumbent on CXC to urgently resolve this matter so that they can get on with their lives." End quote. The results of the CXC examinations were released on Tuesday, the 22nd of September, following a ceremony at CXC headquarters in St. Michael, Barbados. Now we will have more on the results from CXC. Local officials had a press conference at NTN. We will have more on that, but first, former Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony answered a slew of questions raining down from the local press on Thursday, all relating to the ongoing controversial development being erected at the foot of Gopiton. Dr. Anthony said whilst there have been numerous suggested solutions, the answers are not as easy as one may think. Rochelle Gonzalez has more.
With tension surrounding the controversial development taking place on Gros Piton, former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Dr. Kenny Anthony, has answered one of the nation's most burning questions. Why wasn't the land purchased by his or the Alan Chasney administration? Dr. Anthony spoke to members of the local media on Thursday on the matter, one which has seen his name as the sitting PM during the time that the land was acquired by the American billionaire come into disrepute. In direct response to the question, Dr. Anthony said the land acquisition was in fact considered. However, the matter was not as easy as one might have thought it was to handle. On the other hand, he said measures were put in place to keep developments like the current one from being an issue.
When we looked at it, it was simply too prohibitive. At the time, I think we were talking anywhere from $300 to $500 million. And very clearly, it would have been a monumental challenge for the government at the time to buy all the private lands, because there's a lot of private ownership around the Pitons. Tremendous. There are a lot of landowners in that area. And plus, of course, you do have some real estate around the Pitons. So we took the view that the better approach for the time being was to establish clear conditions regarding the development of the area around the Pitons. That's one. Why we demarcated clearly based on the report of the PMA and why we established the PMAC. The idea was that the DCA would never act on its own accord, but would always consult the PMAC about the kind of conditions that should be attached to any development in the area.
Dr. Anthony said there are developments in the area that were in existence before his administration was in power. However, even with these, there are still stipulations to follow.
You must never ever forget that Sugar Beach, for example, is smack in the PMA area because it's right at the base of the Pitons. Of course, we met Sugar Beach, and the big challenge with Sugar Beach was to ensure that any future development on the property owned by Sugar Beach, including the construction of new villas, there had to be special conditions. And it wasn't that there are zones that you cannot build within the PMA, but conditions had to be attached. There were zones that were no build zones, period. You couldn't touch it. But there were zones on the outlying areas that you could have built, but there were conditions that had to be attached to any building going up in those areas.
For the part that he played in signing a letter which stated that the concessions are subject to meeting the conditions that the part of the property that fell into the portion of the PMA, Dr. Anthony said he was in actuality sending a warning to the developers. Somewhat defending the DCA, he indicated that they acted in the way that they could whilst upholding the laws governing the PMA.
To say that you have a building in proximity or close to the Pitons, I mean, the marketing value of that is huge. And I was a little astounded when I first heard about the size of the building that they wanted to put in there. I mean, there's a suggestion that the original building was 11,000 square feet, which would have been a huge mansion. But after the intervention and the discussion, that was reduced to about 3,000 square feet. There is, of course, a deeper issue whether the Piton area should be commercially exploited. And I think that's a question that I think we have to pay some attention to as we go ahead. So there are persons, obviously, who have an affinity to the environment. I can't say that that is the case with that developer. I mean, when you look at the history of the matter, several attempts to get approvals from the authorities. But as I said this morning in that program, I'm not a great fan of the current DC and the decisions that they have made, but in this instance, St. Lucians need to understand they did their best to try to protect the area, because on 2 occasions they turned down the applications for permission to build in the area until, of course, the Cabinet intervened and directed that the plans be resubmitted to the DCA.
The former PM refrained from giving an opinion on whether the DCA should make a unilateral decision on the approval of such a development in the PMA. He expressed astonishment over the decision to grant permission to build. However, he said he does not have enough information to determine the reason behind the decision. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Rochelle Gonzalez.
32-year-old Kent Teddy Gilbert has been arrested and charged for possession of an AK-47 rifle, possession of 7 rounds of 7.62 ammunition, possession of cocaine, and possession of cannabis and cannabis resin. On the 11th of September, officers executed a search warrant at a Bois d'Orge residence where they found the items. Police later called for public assistance in locating Gilbert as a person of interest. Gilbert turned himself in on Wednesday, the 23rd of September. He was brought before the 1st District Court on Thursday, where he was remanded in custody until the 19th of November 2020 for further case management. You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Still to come, local education officials commend student performance in CXC but lament continued poor performance in math. What does former Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony make of the possible entry of Timothy Polion into elective politics? He once famously dubbed him a media terrorist. And Bay Gardens Hotel opens its doors to visitors, chugging along with a 15% occupancy rate, but optimistic about future prospects. That and more after the break.